You're listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life, hosted by TravCon.
Hello everyone, welcome to another Travel Nursing and Allied Life podcast. I am a host, Dylan Callier, traveling physical therapist, part of the TravCon committee. Welcome to another Allied Minute, and very excited for this episode. It's going to be a recap of something that we did a year ago, which is look at the Allied numbers for TravCon. So looking at the Allied numbers for TravCon last year, 2022, and then comparing those numbers to 2021. And just kind of seeing where the direction of the conference is going. This is something very important to me because my first year coming to TravCon, we had about 40 Allied persons total. As you'll see, we keep growing every year, not only in TravCon numbers, but also just the Allied percentage overall, slowly taking up more and more of the space, which means more content for us travelers who are not specifically in the nursing professions. Now, looking at these numbers, Allied in that term can mean very different things depending on potentially which staffing agency that you are working with. Sometimes scrub techs are lumped in with Allied. Sometimes CNAs are lapped in with or routed in with Allied. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the therapies, radiology, sonography, lab professionals, and a couple other extra individuals worth noting in these numbers. But looking at the total percentage for 2022, we are at 12.5% of the total conference numbers for Allied. That is up. Last year, we didn't have as great of data looking at specifics. So previously, looking at 2021, we were somewhere between 10 and 12%. 2022, we were at 12.5%. Actually 12.6. So we are growing, and that is very reflected in the Allied room, and specifically for the amount of topics that we're having. The language of the conference is changing to be more inclusive of us Allied individuals. I will start kind of at the bottom, and we'll work our way up for the total top number, top attending Allied profession. And one of the newer travelers that we started seeing this year were pharmacy techs or pharmacists. So welcome to the to the conference. You guys had around like 5-ish or so travelers, and going up from there, SLPs, you tend to stay in that range of around 10 travelers that come to the conference. I think it's probably because compared to 2021, we haven't seen any growth. But I think really our conference is always in September. It's always in Vegas. And it's really not conducive for those who are doing school contracts. So I know it's a little bit harder to get off in that September month if you are working a school contract. And since I believe that's a lot of what the travelers out there are doing for SLPs, I think a lot of the ones that are able to attend tend to be more on the hospital side of things. And so that's why I think that one's just a little more sticky, and we haven't seen a bigger growth in speech-language pathologists. But again, we are having a specific conference topic this year, conference session, towards speech-language pathologists and occupational therapists that I'm excited for. So keep an eye out for that. And as we continue to grow, hopefully more SLPs will be able to join us. Next up is going to be our clinical lab specialists. You guys are at 15 this year. Last year, we were looking more at around 10-ish. So you are starting to see a growth, which is pretty exciting. There's not a lot of lab travelers out there, at least that's the perception. So I'm excited to get more and more lab specialty into the Allied space and at TravCon. The next one up is going to be our sonographer travelers. Previously in 2021, you guys are at 20. This year, 2022, we are looking around like 27 or so sonographers. So a growth of almost 10 individuals. So keep promoting. Keep bringing your friends, and sonographers are starting to creep up there as one of our top attendees. Next is going to be respiratory therapy. I'm thinking, yeah, we did respiratory therapists. You were around 10 last year. And actually you're around that same number as sonographers, around like 25 or so. So you had a pretty big jump for attendance for this year. For those respiratory therapists, you're a very hot topic ever since 2020. And so we've seen that reflected in the numbers, in the conversations that staffing agencies are having about your profession. So that's very exciting as well. Going up from there, occupational therapists and assistants, you are at around 30. In 2021, you're around 20. So a growth of 10 clinicians through the year. Occupational therapists, we are doing more and more clinical type sessions for the occupational therapists, specifically revolving around like dementia this year. So keep an eye out for those. Those are going to be pretty specific to you, and I think you'll enjoy them quite well. And then our top two is going to be our radiology folks, our technologists. This year, you guys were pushing 50. Very, very big jump from 2 years ago, which had about 10. So now you're at 50 clinicians coming in for TravCon, which is super exciting. About plus 20 from 2021. So you guys are growing just on par as well with our physical therapists who are pushing 70 this year. 2021 physical therapists were around like 50 or so. So every single spot has grown since 2021. I want to keep that going. I want to keep that overall percentage growing for Allied. So not only just the numbers for us increasing, but also just taking a larger space at the conference. I think that is important. That's more representative of what the travel healthcare market looks like with more Allied. And then the more and more that we get for our specific professions, the more specific type of sessions that we can have towards those individuals. A good example of this is that clinical lab specialists, we do have a special session just for you guys. It tends to be a little bit smaller, but it allows us to be really narrowed in and niche on those topics that are very specific to us as Allied that you don't really get when you go to a general travel session that's about tax homes, it's about licensure and those types of things. I usually tell Allied travelers that there's pretty much like 3 things that are going to be really special to you. The other 90% of travel healthcare is going to be the exact same as nurses. So you got your clinical aspects of it, you got your licensure aspect of it, and that orientation could look very, very different when comparing a nurse specialty to an Allied specialty. So guys, that is it for the episode. Very excited for these numbers as Allied continues to grow. You will see that reflected in the Allied room. So very excited. Everybody have safe travels out there, and I look forward to seeing you at TravCon 2023.
Thanks for listening to Travel Nursing and Allied Life. You can find the full show notes below or at travcon.org. Please help us out by rating our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.